My name is Christian Twigg-Flesner. I'm Professor of International Commercial Law here at Warwick. The kind of work I do is mainly in the field of commercial, consumer and contract law, and also particularly in the impact of digital technology on the way the law might develop. But what I'm really working on at the moment is to explore how the different business models which have emerged in the digital economy, for example, online platforms or the rise of 3D printing and similar, how they are going to be regulated by both contract law and consumer law to some extent. This is particularly interesting because at the moment we're trying to see how far we can push existing law, whether we have got enough scope within existing law to regulate these new technologies, to cover the business models which these new technologies have created, or whether we have to sit down and rethink how we do certain areas of commercial law and contract law. You know, in recent years, because of this whole digital technology, the pace of change and the shift in the paradigms has been so significant that I suspect in the future we may see more and more rapid changes, and law will have to develop a way of continuously updating itself. Now, the challenge there is that at the moment, law is too slow to respond. What I'm really concerned with is how law can develop new ways and how the legal institutions can be developed in a way that you can have a better, faster, more focused response to changing environments. So with regard to online platforms, which are very common, you know about Airbnb, you know about Uber and those kinds of platforms, a big question is whether these platforms are simply covered by existing laws, whether we can use existing contract laws to deal with all the legal questions they throw up, or whether we have to sit down and really replan how we tackle these platforms. Now, some of the work I've done has been trying to just apply existing English contract law rules to the different elements of an online platform. And whilst you can push English contract law quite a long way, it doesn't take you far enough. So I think the main interim findings I can report are that there is really a need to reconceptualize certain legal approaches, particularly when it comes to these new phenomena such as online platforms and other parts of the digital economy. In fact, like Google and Facebook and other big companies, they're developing their own rules, their own dispute resolution mechanisms. They are kind of displacing the law quite a bit. And the question is to what extent law or lawyers are happy for this to happen, or to what extent they want to claw back some of this. Now, I think as long as those big companies have mechanisms in place which are fair, transparent, and which allow recourse beyond the company, we have nothing to be concerned about. It's when we see mechanisms which are unfair, biased towards the companies, with no recourse to independent arbitration or indeed court systems, that's when we have a real problem. For example, in the field of digital technology, one important debate at the moment is about the rise of so-called smart contracts. Now, these are automated transactions where devices enter into transactions without any kind of human intervention. And these are raising some very interesting novel legal questions, but these kinds of devices, these kinds of practices are already established, they're already being utilized. So the question really is, to what extent are the legal rules still appropriate, or to what extent do we need to rethink an entire area of law? This is a very topical issue, and for example, the Law Commission is about to start a big project on this, so I'm very happy to speak to the Law Commission about the kinds of ideas they might wish to explore. My next big project is to really sit down and think about what international consumer law means. So even though I am very interested in international commercial law, I really want to explore how the increasing internationalization of the world affects consumer law and consumer policy. It's easier to establish international rules for commercial transactions because they are much more straightforward in many ways. Consumer law raises important issues of policy, of social policy, of protecting individuals, and countries have different views as to how they wish to protect their consumers. But there's a really strong sense amongst many scholars that consumer law is the next big area ready to develop an international profile. So the way we can possibly move towards some kind of international approach to consumer law is really interesting and very much on the horizon for the coming years. I approach law, perhaps more than other colleagues of mine, as a doctrinal lawyer. I'm very much interested in legal rules and how legal rules operate, and also to take apart these legal rules and see if they actually do their job. But I do that in a certain context, and my context is very much the practical application of those rules. So when it comes to, say, consumer protection rules, I'm concerned with how these rules actually get operationalized by consumers and by businesses. When it comes to commercial law rules, I'm interested to see if these really support commercial transactions or if they have no real practical bearing. So my context in many ways is the practical application of these rules. One of the people I would really like to tell about the work I do is my late father. He really inspired me to be curious about things, to always try and investigate new things that really interest you and not to stick with the same theme. And I would love to share some of the work I've done about the digital economy most recently, but also some of the other ideas I've explored. The other person I would really tell about what I've been doing is another late colleague of mine, Professor Robert Bradgate, who really taught me when I was a student how to become a forensic doctrinal lawyer, how to really take apart legal rules and critique them, reconstruct them, and see how they operate in practice.